outdated, but it still has a place, and it still has a role to play in British cultural life.
Thank you. It's just a choice. I don't think it's outdated, but everyone should have the choice if they want to get married or not. It's good for some people, maybe for others, no.
Definitely not. I think marriage in itself may be outdated, but it would always be there. Marriage is something that would always be in society, for sure.
Oh, shooters! Just my opinion for me, I think if you're not going to have children, it's a little bit of an outdated system, possibly. And I feel like people don't have the same respect for it that they used to.
I think no. It used to be, but I think it's coming back as a trend, and I think us as humans will always want to have a special other. So. Cards here.
I don't think marriage is outdated. However, I do believe that there are some aspects of marriage that can be outdated.
Welcome to the program, shooters and viewers. For a very long time, the family unit has traditionally been the bedrock of our society, and the conventional definition of the family is a marriage between a man and a woman. But marriage rates are falling all over the world. Here in Korea, 40% of single men and women believe marriage is not a necessity. So today on Shooters, we ask, is marriage outdated? As always, we're going to begin with a roundtable discussion and then try to come to a unified conclusion. So why don't we begin with some opinions from our shooters on what you think about marriage and whether you believe it's a must. See, to begin with you, I guess.
Well, as you know, I'm getting married this year. Actually, yes. I'm getting married in a
Congratulations!
Thank you very much.
Yes.
I wasn't expecting that. So I'm getting married in a few short weeks. So I obviously feel that marriage still has an important role to play in my life. Had you asked me several years ago, I might have given an entirely different answer.
So it depends on the person.
All married people say like that.
I think it's true. I'd never contemplated it. I thought maybe it was something that just wasn't gonna happen to me. I perhaps felt that it was just not a necessary thing for my life. And then of course I met someone and my opinion changed. But I also don't think that marriage is outdated in general, not just from my own personal perspective, but I still think marriage has a very vital and important role to play in society in lots of different ways and lots of interesting ways, which I'm sure will come up. But for me personally, it's not outdated.
So it changed with meeting your fiancé.
Yes.
But what is it like? When do you know that this is the one, that, okay, you're going to take that next step? Maybe if you never believed in marriage and now that you are contemplating marriage, what is it?
It's all about timing and stability.
That's exactly right, yeah. I think timing is very important.
Yeah. If you are stable and the other person is stable and ready, it's to embark on an amazing journey with myself.
Okay, Noura, as the other married person on the panel, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think, so people would always want to find that significant other, right? They would always want that person who makes them feel, you know, safe and stable and nice. But I don't think it necessarily has to be through marriage. Marriage by itself as an organization, I think it is very old. And it's gone through plenty of changes. And I think it still needs to change more. So for me personally, it's not a necessity. If I hadn't met my husband, I wouldn't be married now. We got married only because we just wanted to live together and share a life together. So that's the only reason that
That's interesting. In Sweden, we have something that is called cohabitant. In Swedish means sambo, and that's as stable as being married. If you ask a Swedish person, like, are you married? And they say, no, I'm sambo, but that is as serious as like being married.
And it's also recognized by the government?
It's recognized by the government. If you're married with a foreigner, living together for 2 years equals being married. If you're living on the same address.
Yeah,
so a lot of Swedish people do that, and I think it's a very modern way of seeing marriage and like having, like you said, just living together and sharing something with a person.
I think it's very liberal, but other countries and other places, that's not an option.
Right.
So you need those, like some kind of recognition from the government or society that you guys are living together, and you can't get it unless it's through marriage.
I'm just wondering, do those couples actually eventually get married, or are they content to stay just cohabitants?
I have families that they have children and everything, but they're just not married. They're single forever. And many people say that living together will make you get to know the other person better by, you know, co-living with someone. And then after a few years, if you think it works out, and it's easier getting a divorce, you just break up. You don't have to go through all that paperwork.
Does it occasionally lead to like problems in terms of who owns things? I remember reading about when Stieg Larsson died.
Oh, exactly, that's a perfect example why Swedish people now are getting married more and more. This popular author, he died when he was 50 unexpectedly, and so he shared most of his life with this woman who was his sambo, but all the money went to his ex-wife. So in legal terms, marriage is important if you're a famous author and have a lot of money.
Oh, okay. So is marriage only for the rich then? So what do you guys think?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I don't find that I've never thought of it as something that's necessary for me, because having children isn't really high on my priority list at the moment anyway. So I find it more, I think it in some ways is outdated. Yeah, I don't think it's outdated if you're going to have children or if you're marrying someone from another country, because there's very practical reasons in that case. But I think there's a lot of people like me, like that are single professionals or not even single, who would want to just live with someone together in a stable environment. And I guess coming from the States, so many people are getting divorced now. Right. I don't really see
about half of all marriages ended.
Yeah, 40 to 50%, and then
about 40%.
And then for remarriages, it's even higher, the divorce rate. So for me, that has always called it into question.
So you don't see any merits unless you have children, or?
I mean, personally, no. Personally, I don't. But if I wanted to have children with someone, or if I wanted to marry someone from another country, then I would. But otherwise, I don't see it. And I really don't. More than that, I don't see the merits of society pushing that onto people.
I think it's really interesting you make that distinction, because lots of people who say that marriage isn't for them would also say that even if they wanted children, why would they need to get married anyway? So you'd want to get married if you decided at some point you wanted to have children.
Yeah, just for the children, because I think it's just common in society that kids want to, I mean, it's still commonly accepted, right? Marriage is still something that children want to say my mom and dad are married.
Sorry, but surprisingly in France, I understand that the marriage rate is very low. It's like 4 out of 1,000 getting married.
Falling down, but then
the birth rate's going up, right?
Yes, well, French people have a lot of babies. But it's also because there's a lot of policies to trigger the birth rate going up. So tax, benefits and all that stuff.
And subsidies, and
Yes,
actually
yes.
the government pays out money if you have children.
Yes,
more and
exactly,
more children.
exactly.
But there's no equivalent subsidies for people to get married? That you don't get a tax break to get
There
married?
are, but not as much. And we have the PACS, which is exactly the same for the tax purpose.
I think the definition
It's just
of,
not the religious marriage.
Okay.
Oh, I see. Okay.
the definition of the traditional marriage that we're all thinking of is quite outdated. I was very surprised that the two people that are married, or at least closest to marriage, you had mentioned before how you always thought before you met your fiance that you never thought you were going to get married, and you guys had commented on how maybe it's just timing. But I feel that we're always changing, and if there are certain points in our life where we feel we're better at one point than another, then aren't we constantly changing, that we can never make a differentiation between the two? And you had said that you didn't really feel that marriage was important or that you needed to get married, but you did get married. There has to be a reason.
Yeah, of
behind that.
course. I mean,
She said,
I don't live in a vacuum, right? I have family and I live in a
So
society.
I understand.
And plus, there's all this legality around marriage. So
Exactly.
I think
Yeah.
I believe that the legal protection that's there for marriage is definitely adequate. But when Angelina was talking about cohabitation, I think there are many countries that acknowledge that, at least in the United States, that when you live together with someone for a certain amount of time, that legally the state will see you as being
Common law
married.
partner, or is
Yes,
that what
exactly,
you call
the
it?
common
Yeah.
law. But here in Korea, whereas it's going to be completely different because not a lot of people will live together, and to where culturally I feel that there's this immense pressure that this is the formula to be happy. That you graduate from a good college, you get a good job, you make this amount of money so that you can become happy, find a mate, and have children, which I believe is completely outdated. You're telling me I can't be happy by being single?
Exactly.
That's
I feel like
totally out of
Korea
line.
is-
I think like in the Arab countries, in the Arab culture, marriage is a big thing. Even in the Islamic, right? It's an Islamic culture plays a major role. You need to complete your half, right? And this is a term that is used for, I think, all over the world. So like find your other half, complete yourself. You're not this whole notion that you're incomplete as an individual unless you find someone else is pretty outdated, I think. I don't think this is why people should get married. Not just because I feel insecure as an individual and I need some protection from someone else. That's the wrong
Does
reason.
giving birth to children also take up a huge part of the necessity for marriage in the Arab world as well?
Of
I mean,
course.
like in Korea,
Yeah,
the
if
divorce
you-
rate is high, but still
Yeah.
having children out of wedlock is
Yeah.
considered a big no-no.
In
right?
Palestine, marriage rates are 90%.
Wow.
90% of marriage rate. However, the divorce rate is climbing. It's 20% now. In Lebanon, though, there's a 95% of single people. Same in Iraq. In Iraq, it's 80%, I think, of single people. So it's fluctuating and it's changing. It's constantly changing. But if you want to live with someone and if you want to create a family and have children, you have to be married.
Right.
Otherwise, it's unacceptable.
Angelina, what about Chile? Because I know that Sweden has a pretty low marriage rate, but Chile also, and does it also have a
No, it's because of a different reason. It's
Yeah?
very close to the Arab world too. But also Chileans these days, they don't want to get married because it is difficult. It is expensive to get married, and people are more career-oriented these days. And getting a divorce in Chile is so hard. Like the bureaucracy, and it costs a lot. So people don't want to take that risk anymore.
Yeah, one thing that I find just kind of a little bit unsettling about marriage in America is how early it's often encouraged.
Early,
Not so,
right?
yeah, quite
Same in the
early.
Arab
Like
world.
a lot of people in their early 20s will get married, and that's considered common. And I mean, my sister married at 22 or 23, and like she and her husband have a great relationship, and I love them, and I think they've got a great family. But a lot of my other friends married in their early 20s, and it was
really?
it was tough for them because a lot of people go through some of their biggest changes between
Exactly,
early
the
20s and
case
early
of-
30s. So that's one thing about marriage in my own culture that disturbs me, and especially because it's quite encouraged. Like it's very, of course you have to celebrate when people get married, but it's in the society that like, oh, you're getting a step ahead in life by doing this.
So when you take children out of the equation, just living together or being married, which do you think, I don't know if you can compare, but which is more healthy for the relationship? I mean, if you're married, I think the argument says you usually try harder, you know, just the expense and the difficulties in getting a divorce will naturally sort of push a husband and a wife to try harder, maybe to make it work, whereas living together, could it be easier to just say, oh, it's not working out?
I think some couples tend to like get more relaxed after they get married. They're like, oh, yay, we're married now.
Now
he can't escape, right? There's no way out.
Let myself go.
So I'll just like bring sweatpants
That's a really good point, though. That's a really good point. Yeah.
They start taking each other for granted, and that's
Yeah.
problematic. I've seen that happen with like.
And when
plenty
you're
of
just
couples.
living together, you will not let yourself go. You'll be more on your toes because they can leave me at any time. Is that?
Why do you have
is
to
that what
be
you're
I
saying?
think that's basically the idea.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah.
Doesn't sound like a particularly healthy.
Yeah, that's not healthy.
No, it is a common a common factor. Like that happens with people. But in terms of children, like I said before, I agree. I think marriage makes a lot of sense that there be a social contract in place to ensure that both of these people are committing to each other for a lifetime, especially when raising a kid.
But the problem is that when marriage happens, in cases where both couples are not ready, both like people are not ready for marriage, like you mentioned the early marriage. Early marriage in the Arab world is huge, and because of that, you have like sometimes it's crazy. It's some of the girls just die because it's child marriage.
Right.
Sometimes, yeah. And then, even when it's early marriage, so it's above the legal age of marriage. I mean, who says that they're ready for this kind of commitment? They don't really grasp the idea of being committed to a certain person to the end of your life.
They don't have any autonomy in that decision.
There's no autonomy. No, of course, there's no autonomy. All this matchmaking around marriage, early marriage. So I feel these phenomena just makes it outdated.
How do we define marriage actually within all our
Exactly, I think there's a-
nationalities?
Right.
And if we
Actually,
define
yeah.
it as just a symbolism of love between two people, then it's never going to be outdated.
Exactly.
But why are so many people around the world fighting for their rights to get married? And I'm talking specifically about gay couples, I guess. You know, in the U.S. and elsewhere, it's constantly an issue in the news. They want the right to get married. If marriage is outdated, why are they trying so hard?
For legal, I think it's for legal issues, legal
And in
recognition.
France, it's not for legal issues because there was the PACS, so that provided people. You could actually have a joint union between same sex. But I think it's more. They want to just have equal opportunities and just feel equal.
And I think what happened in Ireland, that's a remarkable zeitgeist-defining moment in our culture. I mean, even bishops in Ireland said that was kind of like a social revolution. For a country that's so Catholic, so predominantly religious, to make such a secular decision, such a secular and overwhelming decision to allow that type of equality is really incredible. And so I think that actually shows that marriage has kind of a cutting edge role to play in defining different aspects of what's happening in lots of cultures.
I think what happened in Ireland indicates that people are more now accepting towards gay marriage and gay, like just people, from the same sex sharing a life, not necessarily marriage by itself. So I think it's an acceptance more towards gay than marriage. Marriage rates are like plummeting all over the world, even in the most conservative parts in the Arab world. Divorce rates are increasing and marriage rates are decreasing.
So maybe the institution of marriage just needs to be updated with allowing gay marriages and different types of marriages. But let's take a moment now to look at the results of an online poll that we took on this very issue, see what our viewers thought. So the online poll results were overwhelmingly in favor of no, that it's not outdated. 77.8% said it was not outdated.
That's extremely reflective
Korean?
of Korean culture.
I just told you, though, the
Isn't
40% of single men and women believe that marriage is not necessary. Doesn't that kind of conflict with these results? Let me just read you some of the comments that we had. One person said, obviously, yes. not only outdated, but downright prehistoric. It treats women like male-owned property for so long and still contains remnants of that taint. On the other side, it's too early to call it quits. There's a lot more people still sticking to traditional marriage method. People have to live together, and one-on-one is the best way to go, and marriage is the best law to confirm the bond.
So you were on the internet yesterday, or?
You weren't supposed to tell. No, it wasn't me. It wasn't.
So, Travis, you're not surprised by the results, or?
Well, I think it's, and when we say it's a bit outdated, I don't think that we're saying marriage itself as an institution is outdated. Maybe the parameters of how we define it.
I entirely agree. I think you're exactly right. But the parameters shift all the time. The parameters of marriage
Well,
have been
that's just
evolving.
human evolution in the first place, though, too.
I want to talk about a point that Jan mentioned about the right timing for, and when you have security. It almost sounds like you have to be financially secure to enter into a marriage. Is that what you were saying when you talk about the right timing and security?
That's especially when you imply babies and marriages, right? So if you're ready to have a baby, you need to be financially secure.
And you believe that personally as well? Because a lot of these younger people in Korea say it's not that they don't want to get married, it's they feel that they can't get married because of the financial burden.
Because it costs a lot to have a kid in Korea.
And you have to have a wedding
Everywhere.
first.
Yeah, I think that marriage shouldn't have anything to do with
not
money,
Spain.
personally. I mean, if you want to get
That's
married,
true.
you should be able to get married. And I think people who let that hold them back are more obsessed with the wedding that they want to have or the show that they want to put on more than actually living with someone, because getting married doesn't cost anything.
And one thing that I really find a little bit patronizing is they assume that I'm going to be happy if I do find someone that I'm not happy without being by myself, which I think is just so wrong. That the definition of what we're trying to say marriage is completely outdated when everyone, the way that you grow up society-wise and the influences that you have put you or make us insta-judge people and put them into categories, because I'm not going to be happy if I stay single the rest of my life, which is completely wrong.
So let's see, the way, this idea of love and the perfect partner and your marriage or your relationship with your ideal other should be based on love was, of course, an invention, right? So it was made during the Victorian period by the Romantic poets and by certain writers. And then in the 1960s, when marketing became such a force that it is in the world today, there's a very famous quote from a marketing man, and he said that what you think of as love was something invented by someone like me to sell Valentine's cards.
Quoting Mad Men.
I am indeed.
But I read about that, and they're saying that these days there is something called post-romantic era, that we have a more modest expectation of marriage.
I think you're exactly right. So I think we're in a kind of more postmodern sphere of life, and we've kind of moved beyond that,
No,
right?
we haven't. Maybe in Britain.
So are you saying that maybe marriage and love have to be taken separately? That one do not necessarily have to lead to the other?
I think that idea that's promoted by Hollywood movies and by romantic novels, that this the only path that's available to us is to find this one ideal person who will fulfill and complete you.
It's destiny. There's
expectation
only
like
one
this
perfect
big.
person.
That Bridget Jones thing where she was a failure. She was a singleton and she was desperately searching for her Mr. Darcy, and she was a failure because she hadn't found him. That's not the message. But so that idea, I think, is becoming, like I said, it's more fragmented, and lots of people don't subscribe to that. And so what I think we're seeing now happening with marriage is being renegotiated. It's being renegotiated by same-sex couples. It's being renegotiated by people who are not religious. And so I think that sees
the reform happening.
I think that's right.
Okay, well, it seems like a lot of the shooters, many of you, actually agree on many of the points, but now it's time to vote on the question at hand, which is marriage outdated? Okay, so whom among you believe that it is outdated? Okay, so it's clearly cut between you two. And now the team that believes it is outdated, yes team, I'd like to ask you to go to the armory to my right and the opposite team to my left. Let's gear up.
patriarchy and how that the institution of marriage is dominated by men.
The divorce rate and how marriage these days is not that successful.
The societal pressure for people to marry is damaging to marriages.
Of course.
Love is what? It's an emotion, and do your emotions change from time to time?
Yes.
I think that's part of the reason people get divorced. Like, they're disappointed in this thing that their parents and their friends sold them on.
Marriage is evolving all the time.
I think it's part of our human instinct, actually wanting to share something with us, with another person.
Marriage still has a role to play.
You see,
People that like to celebrate love.
Yeah, that public aspect is very important. Yeah. People are always going to get divorced, right? People make bad decisions sometimes, but that doesn't mean to say that marriage is completely out of date or that it shouldn't be on the table for some people, right?
So shooters, are you armed and ready? Yes.
Locked and loaded.
Okay, now you will try to convince the other team over to your side of the agreement. Everyone starts at 100% convinced of your own side, but each time the opposing team says something convincing, reasonable, or persuasive, you will press on the minus button. And of course, if someone on your own team says something persuasive, you will press on the plus button. Both the viewers and I will be able to track where your gauges stand, but for now, we're going to begin with a round of opening statements. With the yes team, why is marriage outdated? Who would like to begin?
Okay, so we think it's outdated from three different perspectives, right? We think marriage is outdated because as an institution, it's patriarchal by nature. It asks from women much more than it asks from men, and women are required to make much more sacrifices than men are required to make, and in order for this union to happen. So this is the first point. Second point, we think this is an individualistic versus collectivistic point of view. So there's so much emphasis on that you should not be alone, that being by yourself is bad, and you're incomplete, and you're weak. You need someone to help you and make you happy, and that your happiness depends on someone else. And this is, I think it's pernicious to like let people think that their happiness depends on other people. This is scary, right? And highly disempowering. The third angle is that it's society pressures you into getting married. So these are the main three points which we think that explain why marriage is outdated.
All right, well now it's turn of the no team. Why do you think it's not outdated and still relevant?
Well, there are three very compelling arguments, and there are three very important points, and there are certainly three things which we have to take into consideration. And so the first of those that you're saying that marriage is patriarchal by nature. So historically, in lots of places, and maybe still currently in some places, marriage is patriarchal. However, in lots of places, that patriarchy has been shed entirely, or is increasingly being shed, or will hopefully at some point soon in the future be shed. And again, that's an example of an evolutionizing process that's happening in marriage, which would indicate that it's not outdated and it's capable of updating itself. We can say that marriage is one of many options which should be available to us, okay? It's not the only option. It doesn't have to be the central option. And I don't think we disagree with that. So the world
should not force you to be married, for sure.
Thank you.
But marriage should be available, and it should evolve all the time.
Yeah, but we're not discussing whether it should be available. We're not trying to criminalize marriage, right? No. We're saying it's fine. Yeah, it should be available.
We're not criminalizing singleness.
But the question is whether it's outdated or not.
Yeah, and this is one thing that we talked about, where parents and governments as well do promote marriage as something that's going to lead to happiness. And I think that's where things get kind of dangerous, especially because marriage is failing. So because of the high percentage of people that do get divorced these days, that makes it
marriage
pretty
is failing
tenuous.
Because people were forced to get married before. Talking about the Western world.
And also, as you can see in Sweden, we had different trends, and we had the generation of divorced people, but now people are getting married again
for the right reasons.
But in a more post-romantic reason that we say
for the legal protection. And
no, not only that. It's just a ceremony to celebrate with the person you love with your friends. In not a traditional wedding, but just a ceremony.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's great. We're not saying that. I'm not saying that people should not get married, but I'm saying
it's not outdated. It's just updated version.
Yes, but only updated for. That's a minority that it's updated for, and I think that's great. And I would love to see more of that. But there's a lot of societies where, and even in my own, where marriage is really promoted as a key to happiness or as like part of the circle of life, that for some people they end up marrying, obviously if you look at the divorce rates, end up marrying thinking that it's something that it isn't, you know. And I think that that comes from outdated perspectives on what marriage stands for.
And I think there's a problem with the way that marriage is portrayed. It's portrayed as something that is going to make you happy and then you're going to live happily ever after. Marriage is serious business. It's hard work. It's a relationship that you have to work and maintain and take care of. It's not something that is gonna, like, all of a sudden make you super happy.
But they also say that nothing worthwhile is easy, right? You have to work at it.
Agreed.
And there are many surveys that actually say that married couples not only end up being financially more secure than their single counterparts, but they also end up being healthier, both physically and mentally as they age. Have you seen any of those results or studies?
I've definitely heard a lot of people.
Mary's ready.
I've definitely heard like that. One of the big arguments that I hear when I talk about this with my friends is like, "What are you gonna do when you're 70 and you're sick?"
Gonna take care of
and I just, again, that's another one of those examples where I think like, what are you gonna say? Exactly.
I think when
I hear that, it just sounds so silly to me, like, because it's like fear mongering into marriage.
Exactly. I think giving
Mm.
us those type of statistics or these studies that's saying that, yeah, percentage-wise, people that are married are happier. It's because they grew up thinking that marriage is already supposed to be some type of epiphany, or it's supposed to be a part of the cycle of life, just as easy for you to get your driver's license or to graduate from college, that there's some type of formula to make you happy, that you have to get a good job, you have to make this amount of money, you have to get married, and then you have to have children. And because this is instilled in us, the reason why we brought up the argument for social conditioning, religiously or with the society pressures that come from us from all sides, that has instilled in us this sort of unfair concept of what marriage and happiness, how it goes hand in hand. To whereas if I feel that I'm happy as a single person, that automatically people will judge you, and they will think that maybe, they aren't happier, or they'll actually put us in a certain category to where those statistics that you were talking about.
Unhealthy,
I'm not sure if this is a
unhappy.
fair generalization of the whole entire single population.
Do you find that married people are condescending to you? Do you find them condescending when they talk with the single people anyways?
I don't think it's condescending at all. I think, especially with the divorce rate, Jan, you were mentioning just earlier that it was because they were forced into marriage. I really didn't understand what you meant when you said that statement. But from my perspective, from what I've seen of marriage through my parents have been married 45 plus years, and for other friends that I do have, and just seeing marriages in general, and also seeing the amount of divorce that has happened from that.
Society forced people to get married before, and now they're
I don't think that
society
society forced them to get married. These are smart people. They were in the epitome of their jobs. They were financially ready. They got married, but then they decided after living with somebody.
That society is forcing people right now, right? That's what you guys are saying.
Are you saying that you actively feel this pressure?
I don't personally feel it, but I know that people around me feel it.
Do you feel the pressure?
I don't think people are trying to deliberately be condescending or unkind. But do you
feel the social pressure to get married?
No, not at all.
Not at all.
This is because I am very secure in who I am, and I enjoy my singlehood.
Me too.
And it doesn't matter what society says. I mean, this is me personally.
But that's you dealing with pressure. However, pressure is put on you.
Yes, of course.
Right? Of course.
But
so covering up.
right.
And so personally, I want to ask you, I want to ask you a really quick question. I won't put you on the spot. You can think about it for a while.
Feel free
but
to
what
put
is
me
the
on the
reason
spot.
why you're getting married very soon?
Well, I'm
Barry?
glad you asked.
And so I wanted to ask you guys as well, do you not feel that when we were arguing about like gay marriage and understanding, this is not something that's has been evolving
Mainstream.
for the past, let's say, 20 years. Yeah, it's probably been more focused on this is probably what, the past 10 years? And so when most people think about marriage and we look at the percent for any different country, if we were to take a world vote on saying, is marriage between a man and a woman, or can it be a man and a man, I would still like to believe, because we live in such a conservative society worldwide as a whole, that it's probably still going to be seen as a male and a female. To which you said it's evolving, but I would say yes, but it's outdated currently.
In Korea,
from the
it
majority
definitely
of what
is.
people think.
Right? At least
I think
Everything
you
is
guys have
outdated.
walked yourselves into a hole. You're saying it's evolving, so it means almost
I
that
know,
you're
I know.
admitting that it's outdated, and it
Right.
needs
It's
to
evolving
evolve.
then.
That's absolutely not correct, I'm afraid. And here's why. Now, the first thing that you asked, okay, you asked me why I decided to get married.
Yes.
And I think it's very interesting because at no point up until the point where I decided to get married did I feel any sort of social pressure whatsoever. Okay. So I'm aware of all the same movies and all the same books. And there was no implications for me whatsoever to reject that. Social programming out of hand, okay? So I think you're overstating this idea of social programming quite significantly. I agree that it's there, but I think you're overstating it dramatically.
We think you're understating.
Furthermore, in terms of why did I make that decision, so again, it's a very personal decision, right? So I met this incredible girl and I decided that I loved her and I wanted to have this long relationship with her, and I just saw this door opening to this long, happy life, and all I had to do was walk through it. And that's an incredibly personal decision, and that's one which I'm sure lots of people have and will continue to have.
And that's great. I commend you for it, but why does it have to be marriage? Why can't it be just you living together?
Be marriage.
No, I think you
so
have the
marriage
right
should
to
be
choose
one of a
whichever.
range of options which is available to people. And in lots of places, so let's take Britain for example, or let's take Sweden for example at the moment, it is one of a series of options which is right now available to lots of people. And let's all bear in mind that marriage has evolved and has updated itself in all sorts of ways continually for several centuries.
In the UK, is it possible to live with someone and like be legally recognized as a couple?
To be legally,
Like a
you
common
can
law
have a
partner.
civil partnership.
Not civil marriage. I'm talking about not having a legal agreement that says you are married.
I don't think so. After the First
So
World
it's not
War,
that developed
there were
yet
issues
then, right?
with common
It's
law
not that
wives.
advanced Maybe in Sweden.
I mean, I think we can agree that marriage as a whole is dropping all over the world, so it's becoming a less and less popular option, but the option is still out there. I mean, there's the Daily Mail, of course, a very esteemed Daily Mail, and Foreign Policy, even some other media outlets have predicted that the institution of marriage will be extinct by 2040.
Because we will have other kind of ceremonies to get married.
I don't know how you believe. How do you think about
The
that?
institution of love is never going to die.
The romantic.
We have to
Do you
be
think
song
it'll
for you,
become
by the way.
extinct? For the yes team, I want to ask you, if you think it's outdated,
So
will it become
it's
extinct?
realistic for the society as a whole. So it's far from being extinct, yet I can feel that it's changing, right? There's some indicators that say that, for example, like in Ireland, they've legalized gay marriage. Nowadays, women are becoming more empowered and more independent. And this is why I think also it contributes to the drop or the drop of like marriage rate or the increase of divorce rate, because women have more options and they're more empowered now. And yeah, so it's changing. I can feel that it's gonna change. It's never gonna disappear from the face of the earth. I think it survived for so long.
at the
might
same
become
time-
a real number. You know? The rate of marriage might become just the right amount of people that actually want to get married.
Exactly.
Yeah.
People
That's
can choose to
right.
get married for the right reasons, not because they're forced into it or
we're
pressured
not
into
against
it.
marriage. We think that the way that it is practiced nowadays is outdated.
Yeah, and
I don't want
not
marriage
all
to
of
be
them.
extinct.
And
I just
that-
want it to be
yeah,
reformed.
I mean, she's married.
Yeah.
And,
I
and
love
what you're
my husband.
talking about is, I think, yeah, like what the
And I'm
future of this
single
should be.
and I don't feel the pressure, but I'm open to marriage if it will happen. But if it doesn't happen,
That's
it's
still
not
okay.
gonna make me a sad person.
But you just said earlier in the show that so many people here pressure you at your work and stuff.
at my
so-
work, but that doesn't affect me as a person because where I come from is a different kind of society.
Exactly.
But I think
So it's a you thing. It's an individual, personal thing.
Yes.
How you deal with pressure.
Because
Is
my
your
society
marriage
is an
outdated?
individual society.
No, my marriage is not.
Okay, I think this is a good time to see what the people on the streets of Seoul
Take
think
it to the
about this
streets.
very sensitive issue. So let's see the VCR.
Wait, pardon.
다양한 가족 제도를 인정하려면은 뭔가 사실혼 관계로 확장시키는 게 낫지 않나라는 생각이 들어서.
I think marriage is outdated because I think monogamy is an arbitrary social institution that can potentially hold things back by imposing limits on things that we could break free from.
꼭 해야 되는 그런 거는 아니라 의무는 아니라고 생각해요.
Marriage in general, I think, is just a piece of paper. Because whether you're married or if you're not, you still live together, you still share the same things. The only thing is that under law, it's different.
서로의 약속을 지키는 거라고 생각하고 이 약속에 대해서 이렇게 책임감 있게 하기 위해서 하는 세레머니라고 생각하거든요.
저희 애들을 보고도 지금 뭐 필수라고는 얘기 안 하거든요. 자기 할 일이 많으면 또 결혼보다 더 중요한 게 있을 수 있잖아요. 자기 인생에서.
아무래도 요즘 젊은 친구들은 결혼에 대해서 이렇게 긍정적으로 생각하지 않더라고요. 그래서
본인은 어떠세요?
저는 이미 강을 건넜기 때문에.
So we just saw what people on the streets of Seoul think about it, and actually the results reflect what we saw on the online poll, which is 80% thought it's not outdated.
Wow.
Yes, which can be surprising, I guess, for the yes team. How do you take that?
It's surprising
well, actually,
for the no team.
For the yes team, it's not surprising because like you asked before earlier, whether we think that marriage is going to be extinct and this phenomenon is not going to be present in the near future, and we think that this is not the case. However, we wish that it could go through certain reforms to make it more sustainable.
This isn't about talking about what you'd like marriage to become, but you believe that it's outdated now.
Yeah, we do believe it's outdated.
Some of the people were talking about the mentioned family in marriage, and if marriage were to become extinct or become even a less popular notion, how do you think this would affect the family sort of driven society?
I still think marriage is important for family units.
Okay.
So
That's interesting because that's quite a conservative opinion. Like, given what you're arguing, especially that's
well, he has always
I don't think it's that unique of a standpoint to take. Like, I'm just saying, if someone's not going to have a child, I think there's less of a reason for them to get married on paper, unless you're marrying someone from a different country. I think there's
you on our side here?
Wait a minute.
No,
marriage is out of date. Marriage is out of date unless you're planning a family?
Well, think about kids at school. Like when I was in school growing up, a couple of the kids in the classroom were like raised by parents who weren't married, and they were outcast by the other kids. So seeing that, seeing that marriage is commonly accepted. Yeah, man, Middle America is not like this
and
advanced.
And this is the U.S., not Palestine.
You know, so to me, like just judging from that, if there's any way that it might affect how my child is raised or someone else's child is raised.
Kids in general are generally known to flourish in a more secure environment, whether it's a one-parent or a two-parent, but usually the studies show that they
When I went to school, my friends who had divorced parents, sometimes I could be a little bit jealous because they had 2 houses and they were more happier.
Man, most kids, they usually are more unstable.
Not gonna feel like
no, because their parents weren't fighting it; they were happy in their new kind of life.
From a personal experience,
bad neighborhoods.
From a personal experience, having 2 houses is double work because I went to my mom's house and then I have to clean and go to my dad's house and I have to clean there.
And if it was an
and
acrimonious divorce, I don't think it would be very positive.
No, but I think, I don't know, speaking from my own experience.
Okay, let me just come back to the point though that marriage as being sort of like the bedrock of societies, and is that also an outdated notion then?
Oh, that's absolutely an outdated notion, and that's not coming back.
Okay.
So we absolutely, especially in more technologically advanced societies, we live in a more fragmented and a more atomized society. There's all these little groups, there's all these little different identification groups, and we group and bracket ourselves in all sorts of different ways. So absolutely, marriage can never play the central role that it's played before. Nevertheless.
Do you both agree with that too?
Yes.
Okay.
Nevertheless, I want to hear this. You're arguing against yourself, Barry, so I want to hear the nevertheless.
But nevertheless, marriage is absolutely a vital and important force, and it should be an option that's there and that's available in a fragmented
It is there. It is an option that's going to target. It's just outdated.
Let's
to
bring back
redefine the parameters of it.
Okay,
it's redefining itself right now.
I don't think it is. Let's.
While we're talking, it's doing stuff.
Okay,
oh my gosh. Okay, would you not agree? And this is statistically accurate. secret that most marriages, 40% of the entire world ends in divorce. And this is not even counting.
That's a very sweeping
count,
generalization.
this is not even counting the marriages that are still intact where people are miserable. Maybe they're just still in the marriage because of kids, for financial reasons, whatever the reason.
Those are good points.
Yet still,
That's so interesting.
if you're gonna get married and you know that you might have a 40% chance of getting divorced, don't you need to reevaluate why you get married in the first place? Or if what you think of the ideal marriage is, don't you think you need to change it a bit?
That's
so
where
that
I
it
think
is a little
marriage has been,
outdated?
I think in many ways marriage has been outdated by divorce. And the reason that I said that about marrying if you're going to have children is because I take it very seriously. I look at examples of marriage in my life, like my parents being the number one, and they have an amazing marriage. And I really respect them for that, and it's helped me. But I think when I look at marriage in the society as a whole, it's just been devalued, and I think it's outdated by the whole concept that it's not till death do us part. It's until this doesn't work for us anymore, just like it doesn't work for the rest of, or half of society at the time. And that's where I feel like, what does it stand for? I think what it stands for is outdated because it is outdating itself. I wouldn't say it's evolving itself. It's outdating itself.
Then would you support maybe living together with a potential life partner before entering into marriage, which could provide you with more legal and societal benefits?
I think that can be a good option for people.
I think that's a great option.
Yeah.
I think we're taking the romance out of that type of relationship, but I think that is a great option that you could.
So then you're not. So you just essentially said marriage itself is not outdated. Then, if you can precede that by living together and kind of test out the waters and then go to marriage.
So just taking different
we're
steps
saying it is
until you get
outdated
married.
because a lot of people don't realize that a marriage, even though you have this contractual legal item that says you're Mr. and Mrs. whatever, but that it also is a lot of give and take. A lot of people don't realize that this is not going to make you complete. This isn't going to make you happy. That it's going to be even more pressure, or maybe even stress
It could make
for
you
you
really
to
happy.
take care or
Travis
think
and
about
Yan,
someone
guys,
else.
I have to stop you. We've reached bullseye. So we've reached bullseye, and it's a 100% win for the yes team.
Nice.
Congratulations.
Good job, guys.
I thought it was kind of even. I'm quite surprised. Barry, how are you going to explain this
I have
to your
no
fiancé
idea
and
how I'm
fiancé's
going to
family?
explain it, and I have to say I'm still very disappointed with the decision that we've came to. And I think still when
You pressed it too, didn't you?
I didn't press it as much as
I pressed a little bit.
I think your arguments were very solid, and I don't think there was anything that you said would offend your fiance.
Well,
at
no,
all.
but I think there's still something that I'm still disappointed that we didn't address. This is just a few short weeks after Ireland made this incredible historic decision. It became the 19th country in the world which allowed same-sex marriages.
It's almost like you're contradicting yourself.
19
though.
out
You're
of how many
saying that,
countries?
yes, it's outdated. It's outdated. Why? Because it needs to include
needs
gay
change,
marriage.
yes.
It needs
Because
to
most
include all
countries
these
aren't like
different things.
Ireland.
But there's
You had the
19
arguments.
countries that.
Out of how much? How many countries?
But what does that tell you about marriage? What does that tell you about marriage right now?
That it needs
They
to
want
change.
to be
It
married.
needs to change.
But it's
We
changing.
need to
Marriage
change.
is that it needs to change
It's
all the
changing
time.
already.
Exactly.
And
By
it's
itself.
always been changing
19
throughout its
countries.
entire,
So it
entire
doesn't-
history.
it does
It's just
make
a
me
little bit
sad.
late. It's trying to cater to you guys, but you guys are not being patient. You know?
We need to go through some process and build some trust.
You're saying no, it's not outdated. Yes, it is outdated because we need to redefine the parameters. And you even argued that, yeah, it's constantly evolving, yet for most people, they do have this certain concept of what marriage is.
Yes.
And so with that evolution, that means, yes, it is a bit outdated because evolution, what does that mean? It means change. Does that
Right.
mean it's always the same? No.
Very
So
true.
you are conceding to the
It's
fact
a
that
little bit
marriage
late.
is
It's a
outdated
little
and
bit,
needs some
Most of the
changes.
people who look at marriage and think about what it is aren't like these advanced Northern European or UK newspaper writers. Like it's normal everyday people from countries around the world. You know what I mean? Like the you know what I'm saying? I'm talking about everyday
American
people
world.
around the world, like right? White bread Americans.
Yes.
The way they look at marriage isn't like this advanced thing. And in fact, many people, like it or not, are going to be people that think what happened in Ireland was something that's not good for marriage.
Yeah.
They're seeing that as, you know, I don't feel that way, but you have to admit, probably most people in many countries would see that
It's
the
not
other way,
mainstream
unfortunately.
yet, so we can't argue that it's already developed.
Okay.
And the fact is, you were won over to this side.
Yes.
So
Right.
I think if we need to work on that statement, we would have to recognize the fact that marriage is outdated.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, let's try and put a bit of our evolution aspect in there.
Yeah, a little Darwinianism.
Maybe evolving so that you can keep out the sexism or the
Of course.
predetermined roles that you have or stereotypes.
Well,
all
unless-
kinds of different things. That being single is okay too.
Of course.
So I guess it's unless it evolves to be relevant to the times.
Okay. So
have
both
statement.
sides happy with that?
Marriage to
Marriage
Right.
2.0.
So marriage is an outdated institution unless what?
Unless it evolves to be relevant.
Yeah.
Relative to the
Very good.
times.
Yeah, relevant.
All right. Well,
To the
this week
times.
Shooters asked, is marriage outdated? And Shooters answered, it is outdated unless it evolves to be relevant to the times. And that does it for another edition of Shooters. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, viewers. Thank you, Shooters. And we'll see you again here next time. Bye-bye.
thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.